Oh, welcome back everyone. So we're now into part 3 of this build on the Italeri, I'll come back to that in a minute, the Italeri Apache Longbow. What I've now done is added some of the small parts that are onto the fuselage. So there's a couple of parts up there, those parts there, all of these things on the underside of the fuselage. Basically in an attempt to get as much onto here as possible before we go on to the painting stage. It does get a bit more difficult now because obviously if have a little accident it could end up breaking a part off, which you don't really want to. We're on to the next problem that we come across on the Italeri Apache, and it's the TADS system, the Target Acquisition and Designation System. It's this construction here. According to this, you put the two halves together and then slot it into this bracketry that fits on the front of the longbow itself, and there's a bracket there. Looking at the reference pictures I've got, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. The only problem that you have is I've painted the fronts of this and put the glazing in there, and given that, you know, some colour, which is fine. That goes in there. The back of that goes on to there, but as you can see, it's a pretty shocking misalignment, but you know, you can live with that. You could stick that together, and you could deal with the seams. Really easy to do, not a problem. However, if you put those two parts together and you have this bracket here, which is part number 79B, you can't put that into that. You can't fit it. It's virtually impossible to do. Now, had a look at this, and you'll see there's a little sort of step there. I thought, oh right, that might be something that can help, but you'd have to put it in sort of that way, and you can't, because the disc at the top that's for locating it in the fuselage is in the way, and you know, you don't really like to force things, because things that get forced get broken, and that doesn't fit. Right, okay, so let's take the two halves and just get the right orientation. So that, you know, looking at it at the front, that's got to be there, so that's got to be there. So the two pins there for locating, which you don't really want to worry about too much, line up on that side. So what if we were to put this in first? Would that work? Well, again, it's a sort of a push force fit, and right, okay, fine, we've got that there, and I could slide the two halves together, but that top gets in the way again, and the only option you're left with is to force that. Okay, well, if that's the sort of way it's got to go, let's just check some clearances. So the top half there, well, yeah, you can sort of get that clearance to work, but right, problem is that, let's use the scalpel just to highlight this, the width of this bracket here is too wide. It won't go through that center portion there, and you'll get that in place because you can slot that in there by sort of forcing it down below the round section and getting that into place. But that's a fairly tight fit in there as well, so that's not very good. And you know, it's a bit awkward to get back out, and then this, that won't fit. So I think the next step is to actually reduce the width of this collar, this round section here, and on this side just reduce the width of that, and then see if we can get that to slide together. So I'll go off and try and do that and have a look at that, but it's not a very good design. The only other option I think would be to actually cut that section there out of the construction, and then this could go into place there. Right, try to keep this in view. Those two halves could then mate up without having to worry about sliding past the top section, and then this bracket, which goes on the front, would hide the fact that that middle section is missing. Alternatively, we just cut that in half there, and then when we join it together in there, it should fit. I think that's the easiest option. Of course, the problem is well, the problem is you've still got to paint all of this and deal with these seams, and it's I don't think it's probably the best design. I don't know how we would get through that. I don't know if anybody out there has found an easy way of doing it, but I think that's the easiest way, is just cut that in half, use a scalpel or a saw. I've got one of these really good saws, very thin, accurate cut, and I think that might be the way to do it, by cutting it through there and putting that together. Yeah, what do you do? So I've got a piece of scrap board here that I use for all sorts of things, so let's give this a go. Cut that down the middle. Put the scrap board there because I don't really want to saw into the cutting mat. Right, so now we've cut those in half ish. They're obviously not exactly in half because there is a gap, albeit a fine one, of the cutting of the saw blade. Put them out of the way. Take this half and this half, and because it's got the pins on it, we can use that to locate it together. Still got an issue with that round section there, but it's better than it was, and we can get that half and put that into place and stick that there, and then that should then fit quite neatly into the front of the Apache. And the gap that's in there, if you can see that, there's a very tiny gap in there, that will be hidden by this bracket that goes onto the front here, and you can deal with the seams here, and then everything can be masked up for paint, and the awkward bit will be just really making sure that when you paint it, you get into the corners. And another thing that I've just thought about is potentially painting these parts separately now with a bit of primer and the olive drab, and then putting them back together. The only problem with that is, of course, you've still got the seams to deal with, and you're going to ruin the paintwork if you still got the seams to deal with. So we'll assemble it from that point, and then we'll mask it all up and get it ready for paint. So that's my solution to that problem. Well, anyway, I cut the two in half, and like I say, they're stuck together, and now the only problem that is to deal with is just to tidy up these seams, which is a fairly straightforward job, and then it should all fit quite neatly. Whoa, God, that part fits there, and again that should fit quite neatly once everything is mounted onto the front of the fuselage. And it just so happens I have it here, so the front of the fuselage, turn it around the right way, it pops into that section there, and a little button on the underside there pops into that small hole there. From a point of view of putting the kit together, yeah, there you go. So that's now in place in there, and yeah, it's all right, I suppose. You know, you can still sort of flex that around a bit, but to be honest, I don't think it's a very good solution to the problem. But once all the glue is set, I'll get those seams dealt with, and we can move on. It posed a problem though, because I wanted to then look at what happens with the Academy kit and what happens with Hasegawa, how the two companies address the problem, and we'll have a look at that in the next video. So thanks for watching, thanks for putting up with that. That's, you know, Italeri, yeah, okay, I can't really blame them, but anyway, thanks for watching. Please leave your comments. I'd be looking forward if you've got another solution to that problem, and like and subscribe. If you've got any advice for me about Italeri kits, look forward to seeing it. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.